"May I have your leftovers, sir?" But when the billionaire looked into the black girl's eyes, a miracle happened. In the opulent Le Pavon restaurant, nestled in the heart of bustling New York City, the glow from crystal chandeliers shimmered like tiny shooting stars, casting glittering reflections across every surface, walls draped in rich red velvet, each table adorned with subtly scented candles. Everything spoke of privilege reserved for society's elite. The gentle strains of piano music wove through the air, mingling with the polite murmurs of distinguished guests to create an atmosphere of power and wealth. Seated in the most secluded corner, apart from the evening's usual commotion, David Maxwell sat motionless, as statuesque and cold as marble. Celebrated as one of the top billionaires in the tech world, he possessed everything most people could only dream of: vast fortunes, global fame, unshakable respect, and a level of influence few could comprehend. His impeccably tailored black Armani suit accentuated his commanding frame, and a Rolex gleamed on his wrist with every subtle gesture. Yet behind his composed exterior, his eyes were heavy with a weariness no one had ever pierced. Before him stood a feast arranged with exquisite care, a perfectly seared filet mignon emitting an irresistible aroma, flanked by glasses of deep red Bordeaux waiting to be paired. Yet the dishes lay cold and nearly untouched. To David, this ceremonial meal was nothing but a hollow ritual, a tedious social performance he endured to maintain the illusion of a flawless life. That illusion had shattered 10 years ago, on a night when a devastating car accident claimed Sarah, his beloved wife, and their young son, Ethan, the very light of his existence. From that fateful evening on, David stopped truly living. He merely moved through meetings, signed multi-million-dollar deals, and appeared at glamorous events that felt increasingly meaningless. He lowered his gaze to his wine glass, swirling the crimson liquid as if searching for answers in its depths. Since the tragedy, he'd tried everything to fill the emptiness, pouring investments into grand projects, working himself into exhaustion, even traveling the globe to outrun the persistent ache. Yet loneliness always found its way back, haunting his heart like an inescapable shadow. A polite ripple of laughter from a neighboring table broke his reverie, drawing his eyes upward. Spotting the couples and friends around him, their laughter and light-hearted conversations only deepened his sense of alienation. None of them knew that beneath the veneer of wealth and success lay a soul shattered beyond repair. Resolute, he inhaled sharply, rising to his feet. He planned to leave immediately, to retreat to the cold refuge of his empty mansion where no one would demand that he pretend anymore. But at that precise moment, a gentle voice interrupted his determination. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" The small, unexpected request pierced the restaurant's hush, jolting David so sharply that he turned around. And in the instant his eyes met those of the young black girl who had spoken, a strange, unfamiliar light, one he had not seen in over a decade, suddenly flickered within him. That phrase, gentle yet resolute, was like a pebble dropped into a still pond, instantly pulling David out of his painful reverie. He started and turned to look more closely at the speaker, surprise flickering in his amber eyes. Under the glittering lights stood a very young black woman, her face etched with hardship. Her loosely tied curls fell in soft tendrils around sun-darkened, gaunt cheeks. This was Jasmine Parker, not yet 20, yet her eyes held the depth of someone who'd weathered every storm life could muster. She wore a thin, threadbare coat, worn through in places and wholly inadequate for the biting cold. Her faded sneakers strained at the seams, caked with mud from the dark streets outside. But what held David's gaze most was the small boy cradled in her arms, wrapped in a tattered, fragile blanket. Suddenly, the restaurant fell silent. The piano's notes cut off mid-phrase, conversations died away, replaced by an oppressive hush. The elite diners, until moments ago laughing and chatting, became unwitting spectators to this unfolding scene. Some cast cold, disapproving glances. Others wore expressions of half-hearted pity, as if watching a street play. David felt neither disdain nor pity, only a strange, unnameable stirring in his chest. A tall manager in a black suit, hair slicked back, strode forward, eyes narrowed in suspicion. "You're not allowed here," he said sharply. "Leave at once or I'll call security." Jasmine didn't flinch. Instead, she stood her ground, holding the child tighter, her calm voice carrying a hidden strength. "I won't bother anyone. I'm only asking for what he won't use." David watched, then turned his gaze on the manager. The cold authority in his eyes, usually concealed, now shone unmistakably. With a subtle lift of his hand, the manager froze, knowing that look. The look of a man who could cost him his job in an instant. "She's not bothering me," David said quietly, each word cutting through the tension. "I'll handle this." The manager bowed his head and retreated. Curious diners returned to their hushed conversations, though many still glanced over. Jasmine met David's gaze. Her deep brown eyes held pride and hidden pain. They weren't the eyes of a beggar, or someone exploiting pity. They were the eyes of a mother willing to risk everything for her child's safety and dignity. David studied her, and his heart tightened. In that fleeting moment he saw the reflection of Sarah, his late wife, strong, proud, and fiercely protective. He remembered their early days of struggle, when Sarah looked at him with exactly that same determination to protect their little family. That memory awakened something he'd thought long dead. Gently, he slid his plate toward Jasmine. "Don't call it leftovers," he said softly. "This is your meal and your son's. Please, sit and eat." For a moment she hesitated, disbelief smoothing into gratitude. Then she nodded and sat across from him, hands trembling as she unwrapped the blanket. The child's wide eyes met his mother's, and his tiny hand instinctively gripped her coat. Jasmine lifted a spoonful of food and carefully fed him, each motion brimming with a mother's boundless love. David remained still, untouched by his own meal. He simply watched, feeling a warmth seep into his long-frozen heart. He realized this chance encounter wasn't random, but a twist of fate, drawing him back into a world of genuine compassion, something he'd avoided for too long. He had no idea, though, that this moment of kindness would also herald fierce challenges ahead, because the real darkness was only just beginning to unfold. The moment Jasmine slowly fed Noah each spoonful, the tension in the restaurant began to ease, and the gentle piano melodies resumed. But David no longer heard the music or the surrounding conversations. His gaze was fixed entirely on Jasmine, tracking every small gesture and expression of this young woman. Jasmine did not eat hungrily or hastily like someone starved. Instead, she handled each bite with the care and reverence one would reserve for something precious. She gently unfolded a small cloth from her worn purse, laid it out, and respectfully wrapped the remaining food. Every motion spoke of her gratitude and respect for the meal, as if it were more than mere sustenance but a precious gift life had bestowed upon her and her son. David had never witnessed anything so beautiful and yet so heartbreaking. He felt his own heart constrict, his long-parched spirit squeezed by an invisible force. He hadn't experienced such a powerful emotion in years, profound awe at the dignity and self-respect of the young mother before him. "Aren't you eating?" David asked softly, his voice barely more than a whisper, so as not to disturb the sacred moment Jasmine had created. She looked up at him, her clear, determined eyes meeting his. I'm fine, sir. What matters is that Noah eats well first. David swallowed hard. Her words struck him like a blow to the heart. A mother so young, so frail and deprived, yet still fiercely proud and self-respecting. It reminded him of his late wife, Sarah, who always put their family first, never taking for herself what she saved for her son Ethan. That memory surged back with a force that shattered the walls he'd built around himself. But just as that warmth filled the air, Roger Hamilton, the manager, flanked by 2 security guards, approached again, his face twisted in annoyance. He no longer seemed intimidated by David's presence. Famous for his strictness and cold efficiency, Roger cared only about preserving Le Pavon's elite image. To him, a poor girl like Jasmine simply did not belong. "I told you to leave," Roger said, voice sharp and authoritarian. "This is a restaurant for distinguished guests, not people like you. Get out now." Jasmine straightened, clutching Noah tighter. For the first time, a flicker of fear and hurt crossed her face, but she neither wept nor begged. Instead, she stood quietly, bracing to step away. David rose to his feet, no longer courteous but burning with a restrained fury. He could not tolerate this mistreatment of Jasmine, a courageous woman judged by her poverty. "She's dining with me," he said coldly, each word a razor's edge. "If you force her out, you're forcing me out." Roger froze, his astonishment giving way to panic. David Maxwell was no ordinary patron. He was one of the restaurant's largest shareholders, capable of ending Roger's career in an instant. I apologize, Mr. Maxwell," Roger stammered, bowing his head. "But our policy—" "Your policy does not permit you to insult another human being," David snapped, cutting him off. "If you want to keep your job, remove yourself from my sight immediately." Defeated and furious, Roger backed away. His humiliation fanned his hatred for Jasmine, and he vowed to make her pay in some way. Jasmine looked at David, gratitude shining in her eyes alongside a hint of guilt. She had never sought to put him in such a position. "I'm sorry for troubling you," she murmured, eyes downcast. "You have nothing to apologize for," David replied gently, softening his tone as if to soothe her frazzled nerves. "Sit and finish your meal. No one will bother you again." Jasmine sank into her seat, feeling for the first time in months that she had someone watching her back. Yet she also realized that David's kindness might usher in even greater challenges. Roger's hateful glare still burned in her mind, a warning of storms yet to come. As Jasmine folded the thin cloth, cradled little Noah in her arms, and gently rose to leave, David felt an undefined anxiety surge within him. The young woman dipped her head in a soft bow, a final thank you for his kindness, and then slipped out into the dark night. Without thinking, David grabbed his coat, hurried after her, leaving behind the curious stares of the restaurant's patrons. Outside, New York's winter chill bit through the streets, cloaking everything in icy mist. Under the pale streetlights, David spotted Jasmine's slender figure moving briskly yet cautiously, as if fleeing some unseen threat. He kept his distance, stepping quietly, heart heavy with worry for the harsh life she and her child endured. After a few blocks, Jasmine entered a deserted parking lot. Faded lamps cast a sickly glow on rows of empty spaces. In the darkest corner, she opened the door of an old car, chipped paint, grimy windows streaked with dust and condensation. This ramshackle vehicle was clearly Jasmine and Noah's temporary refuge, a cold, makeshift home in the dead of winter. David's chest tightened, frozen by the sight. He watched from the shadows as Jasmine gently placed Noah inside and closed the door. Through the car's cloudy glass, he could see her silhouette, every movement radiating solitude and silent endurance. He crept closer, ensuring his footsteps made no sound. As he neared, his heart broke at the soft, wavering lullaby rising into the night. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Her fragile yet resolute voice carried across the frosty air, harmonizing with Noah's faint breaths. Each lyric was a mother's prayer, a vow to shield her beloved child from the cruelty, hunger, and cold of the world outside. Lost in emotion, David suddenly noticed another figure in the lot. Leaning against a distant lamppost stood Roger Hamilton, the manager he had humiliated moments before. Roger's face was twisted with fury, his eyes burning with hatred. Quietly, he lifted his phone and started filming Jasmine through the grimy window, his movements precise and calculating, as though he'd done this many times. David realized Roger intended to use whatever footage he captured to destroy Jasmine's reputation and future. Rage coursed through David. He understood that one malicious video could shatter Jasmine's life, and she had no idea of the threat lurking in the darkness. Stepping forward, David's voice cut through the night like steel. "What are you doing, Roger?" Roger jumped, turning toward him, trying to mask his alarm. "I'm just doing my job. We can't let the restaurant's image be tarnished by beggars like her." "Delete that video now," David commanded, eyes icy, offering Roger no escape. Roger sneered, venom in his voice. "Maxwell, how long can you protect her? A poor girl like that is only exploiting your pity. I won't let her get away with humiliating me today." David closed the distance, his tone low and terrifyingly calm. "If you so much as lay a hand on her or that child, if a single hair is harmed, I swear you will lose everything. Your job, your reputation, your standing, even your comfortable life. Consider this your only warning." Roger froze, panic overtaking his bravado, yet in his eyes the embers of hatred still glowed. David turned away and returned to Jasmine's car, his old compassion now fused with a fierce determination. Whatever it took, he would protect Jasmine and Noah from Roger's dark schemes. But he also knew this was only the beginning, and the shadows ahead would be far more menacing than the cold winter night. After Roger slipped away into the darkness, David quietly emerged from the shadows and made his way toward the battered car where Jasmine and Noah sheltered. His footsteps were slow and cautious, as if he wanted to announce his presence gently to avoid startling her. When David's silhouette became visible through the car's foggy window, Jasmine gave a small start, her eyes registering surprise. Then she recognized him, and her expression softened into a mixture of suspicion and confusion. Why did you follow me all the way out here?" Jasmine asked, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to hide her unease. "I couldn't just let you and the baby keep living like this," David replied softly, his tone earnest yet resolute. "You deserve so much more, Jasmine." She lowered her head, fighting back the flood of emotions that threatened to surface. She had never imagined anyone caring about her, let alone someone as powerful and wealthy as David. Yet she also knew that his unexpected kindness could bring consequences she couldn't control. "You're too kind," Jasmine said gently, averting her gaze. "But I don't want to trouble you." "Why won't you let yourself be helped?" David asked quietly, stepping closer and looking deep into her eyes. "You don't have to carry this burden alone." Jasmine was silent for a long moment. Pain and shame flickered across her face before she finally opened up. "I used to be a nursing student, Mr. Maxwell. I had dreams, big dreams of helping people," she began. her voice shaky like an overstretched guitar string. But everything changed the day I found out I was pregnant. The man I loved and trusted vanished the moment he heard the news. He left me alone with the child on the way, without a word of explanation. She paused, drawing in a steadying breath before continuing. David listened without interrupting, knowing that what she needed most was someone to hear her story. When my parents found out, they were ashamed. Ours is a strict family. They value honor above all. They said I'd brought disgrace on them and cut me off. I had to drop out of school, drift from job to job just to get by and care for Noah. Silent tears rolled down Jasmine's cheeks, but she quickly wiped them away, determined to remain strong. I've never regretted keeping Noah, you know. He's everything to me, the only reason I wake up every day. But sometimes I wish I could give him just one day of peace and plenty, free from hunger and cold. Just one day. Then I'll keep fighting. Her final words struck David like a dagger to the heart, filling him with both pain and fierce compassion. The strength and pride of this young mother shattered the icy walls he had built around his own heart years ago. David stepped forward another pace, his voice unwavering and sincere. You and Noah won't just have one good day. I promise you that. I'll help you rebuild your life, and this time you won't have to do it alone. Jasmine looked at him, her eyes glistening with gratitude and lingering doubt, but the determination and honesty in David's gaze left her no choice but to believe him. Unbeknownst to them, just out of sight behind a cold concrete pillar in the lot, Roger Hamilton watched their exchange in silence. His rancor had deepened into a bitter resolve. He didn't just want to destroy Jasmine. He intended to use her downfall to pull David from the very heights of power he so coveted. Roger smirked in the shadows, clutching his phone that held the incriminating footage. He knew that, with these tapes, he could ruin Jasmine's life and wreak havoc on David's reputation. To Roger, this was more than vengeance. It was his chance to climb the ladder he'd always dreamed of. And so, on that frigid night, an unspoken battle between light and darkness truly began, one fraught with secrets, schemes, and hatred, ready to drag them all into an unforgiving vortex they could never escape. The days that followed passed in silence. Yet for Jasmine, small, quiet changes began to take shape. Changes she had never dared to hope for. David said little, but he acted, slowly, gently, and with unmistakable intent. Jasmine soon realized that every morning, alongside her old car, there would be steaming containers of food, high-quality infant formula, diapers, and other essentials for her son. There were no notes, no hints of who was leaving them, but Jasmine knew there was only one person who could be behind it, David Maxwell. At first, she kept her distance. She'd endured too many disappointments and betrayals to easily trust a stranger's kindness, especially one whose world seemed so far removed from hers. Each time she opened her car door in the morning to find those necessities laid out neatly, she felt equal parts gratitude and fear. She was terrified of hope, because hope made her vulnerable, and more than anything she feared that one day it would all vanish, leaving her and Noah plunged back into a darkness even more terrifying than before. But David's concern didn't stop there. One day, just as Jasmine was preparing to take Noah out for what little winter sunshine they could find, a kindly, composed, middle-aged woman approached. Dr. Helen Foster, a respected pediatrician, had been quietly enlisted by David to check on Noah's health. Dr. Foster asked nothing about Jasmine's circumstances, passed no judgment, and offered no pity. She simply examined Noah carefully, then earnestly guided Jasmine on how to care for him, treating them as she would any mother and child who came to her office. In that moment, Jasmine finally wept, not from sorrow or despair, but because, At last, someone was seeing her as a real person, a real mother, rather than a figure of pity to be driven away. She tried to stifle her tears, unwilling to let her gratitude run away with her. Jasmine reminded herself that this kindness might be temporary, a fleeting mercy that could disappear at any time, and she dared not let herself feel too safe. Meanwhile, Roger Hamilton continued his own silent campaign. He dug deeper into Jasmine's past, determined to find any weakness he could exploit to destroy the fragile life she was building. He made calls in media circles to spread vicious rumors, even forging documents to paint Jasmine as a gold digger taking advantage of David. Anything to drag both her and David into the mud he had prepared. One late afternoon, in his dimly lit apartment, Roger reviewed the footage and photos he'd collected of Jasmine. A cruel, satisfied grin spread across his face. He was convinced that once the time was right, he would make David regret ever defying him, and he would plunge Jasmine and Noah into an abyss from which there could be no escape. As for David, he understood the danger Roger posed and the man's merciless, unforgiving nature. Yet he didn't concern himself with the risks to his own reputation. His only focus was how to lift Jasmine and Noah out of hardship, and how to heal the wounds life had inflicted on this brave young mother. David still refrained from approaching Jasmine directly. He knew she needed time to trust and to accept help. Each evening he would drive by the parking lot, watching from a distance to make sure Jasmine and Noah were safe, that Roger's threats remained just that. Threats. Sometimes he wondered if his secret efforts were truly the right thing, or if he was merely putting Jasmine in greater danger. But every time he pictured Jasmine cradling Noah, singing to him with all the love and strength she possessed, David knew he could not stop. He wasn't just trying to save Jasmine. He was trying to save himself, the man who had been dying inside for so many years, now finally rediscovering the true meaning of his life. Still, David knew their time was growing short. Roger's vile schemes could not stay hidden forever, and when the moment came, David would be ready to protect Jasmine and Noah at any cost. Deep in his heart, he vowed that, no matter what he had to sacrifice, he would not let the darkness extinguish the small spark of hope they had just found. The days of fragile peace didn't last long. One bitterly cold winter night, when the pale moonlight filtered through the frosty windshield of Jasmine's old car, she was jolted awake by Noah's unusually weak cries. A mother's instinct snapped her fully alert. She pressed a hand to his forehead. His body was burning up, his breaths coming in shallow gasps as if he were fighting for every precious breath of oxygen. Jasmine's whole body trembled, her heart pounding at the emergency unfolding before her. Without thinking, she scooped Noah into her arms, dashed out of the car, and ran to the nearest hospital through the icy dark. Her hurried footsteps echoed down empty streets, her breath steaming in the frigid air, mingling with Noah's faint cries in a mournful, desperate duet. At the hospital's emergency desk, Jasmine burst forward, voice choked with panic. "Please, help my son. He has a high fever and can't breathe. You have to help me." The receptionist glanced at her coolly from head to toe, then spoke in a monotone she must have used 1,000 times before. "May I see your health insurance?" Jasmine froze, despair slicing through her like ice. I don't have insurance," she stammered, tears streaking her pale cheeks. "Please, just help my baby, I beg you." The woman shook her head firmly, expression unmoved. "I'm sorry, it's hospital policy. We cannot treat patients without insurance. You'll have to find another hospital." Jasmine felt the air rush out of her lungs. She stood there trembling with fear and helplessness, until a single, desperate thought ignited inside her. David. Shaking, she fumbled for her phone and sent a brief, urgent text. "Please help us." Minutes later, as Jasmine's despair reached its peak, screeching tires announced David's arrival. He burst through the hospital doors, face etched with extreme tension, breath ragged from racing to get there. Jasmine had never seen the powerful billionaire so unsteady. "What's wrong with Noah?" David demanded, panic lacing his voice. "He's burning up and can't breathe," Jasmine sobbed, her red-rimmed eyes pleading. "They won't treat him because I don't have insurance." Without hesitation, David turned to the receptionist, voice icy with authority and anger. "If you don't immediately have a doctor tend to this child, I will call the hospital director first thing tomorrow and see to it that you're fired. I'm David Maxwell, and I will cover any and all costs. Don't waste another second." The woman went pale as she recognized the billionaire before her, David Maxwell, capable of making good on any threat. She grabbed the phone to summon the emergency team, her eyes now wide with fear and remorse. Within minutes, Noah was whisked away to the emergency room, the medical staff moving swiftly and professionally. Jasmine stood in the hallway, trembling with relief and exhaustion, tears streaming down her face. David remained quietly by her side, feeling his own helplessness and fear of losing the child he had come to care for so deeply. Unbeknownst to them, in a shadowed corner of the corridor, Roger Hamilton watched everything unfold. He had followed David here, his mind racing with malicious schemes. Seeing David's evident worry for Jasmine and Noah, Roger realized this was the weapon he needed. A cruel smile curled his lips as he raised his phone to capture more incriminating photos, proof that he intended to use to destroy their lives and drag David's reputation down with them. Meanwhile, David gently placed a reassuring hand on Jasmine's shoulder. His voice was soft but firm. "Everything will be okay. I promise you, neither you nor Noah will be harmed." Jasmine looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she believed him, aware, yet unafraid, of the challenges still to come. But in the cold shadows of that night, Roger Hamilton prepared to unleash a storm of his own making, one that would test every ounce of hope David and Jasmine had found, and from which they might never recover. Just as dawn broke after that harrowing night, Jasmine thought the nightmare was over, but in reality it had only just begun. A single photograph, seemingly ordinary but carrying devastating power, spread across social media like wildfire. David Maxwell, the city's richest and most powerful man, cradling a small boy in a hospital corridor at the dead of night. Beside him stood Jasmine, face blank with shock, her eyes swollen and red from crying, her frame fragile and exposed. Within hours, the image was shared thousands of times, accompanied by merciless commentary. Clickbait headlines appeared on major news sites, painting Jasmine as a cunning opportunist, exploiting the billionaire's kindness for money, clinging to his fame to escape poverty. Nowhere did anyone learn the real story behind that moment. People readily believed the smear campaign Roger Hamilton and his media allies had meticulously orchestrated. In the modest apartment David had rented for Jasmine and Noah after that dreadful night, Jasmine sat in silence, phone in hand, watching countless insults and accusations carve into her heart like knives. Tears streamed down her cheeks as strangers, who knew nothing of her situation, took it upon themselves to judge and vilify her. Meanwhile, Roger Hamilton, the architect of this storm, sat back in his lavish office, reclining in a high-backed leather chair with a malicious grin. He knew the wrecking power of the press. He'd seen countless lives destroyed by a well-crafted scandal. This time, his targets were not only Jasmine, but David, too, for daring to humiliate him in front of the elite at Le Pavon. Roger continued to feed falsehoods to the media, making Jasmine the focus of public hatred. He even fabricated an interview in the name of Jasmine's ex-boyfriend, accusing her of being greedy, manipulative, and willing to do anything to get ahead. Roger understood that to destroy Jasmine completely, he had to attack her past, tarnish every good thing she'd ever been, until no one would trust or support her again. David quickly realized the gravity of the situation. His heart clenched as he watched Jasmine tormented by baseless accusations. He knew she didn't deserve this, yet the force of public opinion was a monster. Even his power and wealth struggled to control. Determined to clear her name, David resolved that Jasmine would no longer be a victim of cruelty and injustice. Jasmine looked up at David, tears streaming, voice trembling with pain. "David, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I never wanted to ruin your life." David rose and sat beside her, gently taking her trembling hand. His voice was firmer and more resolute than ever. "You have nothing to apologize for, Jasmine. I should be the one apologizing for not protecting you sooner. I will never let anyone hurt you or Noah again." But even David's strength couldn't instantly quell the media firestorm raging outside. He knew he had to act quickly and decisively. He contacted his personal attorney immediately and began organizing a public press conference to expose every lie Roger had spread. Roger, however, anticipated David's counterattack. He prepared a final, vicious blow, leaking even more fabricated claims about Jasmine's past to the press, promising to unveil shocking scandals unless David backed off and abandoned his defense of her. Amid the ever-intensifying storm of public outrage, Jasmine withdrew into the small apartment, afraid to step outside, fearful of the scornful stares and relentless criticism. Yet, deep in her wounded heart, she knew she was not alone. She still had David, the man who had never abandoned her since the moment they met. Still, Jasmine understood that the battle ahead would be long and excruciating. She wondered if she had the strength to weather this storm, or if she would crumble under Roger Hamilton's ruthless onslaught, devised to drag both her and David into despair and darkness. Amid the eye of that relentless storm, David realized that staying silent now would be tantamount to surrender to the cruelty of public opinion and the malice Roger was spreading. He knew it was time to step into the light and face everything head-on, not to defend himself, but to protect Jasmine and Noah, two innocent lives caught in a vicious media game. David immediately contacted one of the nation's largest TV networks and secured a live interview slot where he would personally address every question and doubt fueling the public uproar. The announcement of David Maxwell's exclusive broadcast sent the online world into a frenzy. People were curious, some even skeptical, about why this usually media-shy billionaire would suddenly appear on television. Roger Hamilton, upon hearing of the interview, felt both rage and unease. He knew David's influence and appeal with viewers, and for the first time, he recognized a real threat to his carefully laid scheme. Roger scrambled to feed more negative rumors into the press, hoping to undermine David's credibility before airtime, but he found his efforts increasingly futile against the public's anticipation. On the day of the live broadcast, David sat calmly in a compact but modern, brightly lit studio, facing the show's renowned host. Studio lights glowed around him, and cameras stood ready to capture every word. Despite the stakes, David betrayed no anxiety. His gaze was steady, tinged with the sadness of long-buried pain. When the host asked about his relationship with Jasmine, David looked straight into the camera and spoke softly, yet powerfully. "I'm not here today to protect my reputation or my career. I'm here to defend the truth, to stand up for an innocent woman who has been misunderstood and hurt by baseless, malicious rumors." His voice grew gentle and somber as he shared the deepest wound of his life. 10 years ago, I lost the woman I loved most, Sarah, and our young son Ethan in a tragic accident. After that, I shut my heart off, living in darkness and loneliness, until I met Jasmine and Noah. Jasmine never sought me out or exploited me. I chose to help her because I saw in her the same resilience, dignity, and boundless love she shows her son, qualities I once admired in my wife. A reverent hush fell over the studio as everyone listened, moved by his sincerity and sorrow. Jasmine is a young mother of incredible strength who has endured too much injustice and pain. I cannot stand by and watch her be hurt again by someone else's hatred and envy. In the small apartment not far from the studio, Jasmine held Noah tight, tears glistening in her eyes as she watched every moment of the interview. For the first time, she felt truly protected by another person. Gratitude and emotion shook her heart, knowing David had stepped into the storm to shield her and her son. David's gaze returned to the camera, determination shining through. I ask you all, before you judge someone, take a moment to seek the truth. Jasmine and Noah deserve our understanding, compassion, and fairness. They are not adversaries, nor are they opportunists. They are innocent people in need of our protection and support. When the interview ended, social media erupted again. But this time, negative comments were replaced by messages of encouragement, solidarity, and admiration for Jasmine. The real story behind that controversial photo came to light, and public outrage turned on Roger Hamilton and his misinformation campaign. In his private office, Roger watched the online reaction with bitter fury. His plan had spectacularly backfired against David's honesty and courage. Enraged, he hurled his phone across the room, his eyes blazing with hatred. Yet inside him, an even darker resolve took shape. He would not be thwarted. He vowed to unleash a new, more dangerous blow that would drag them all into an abyss from which there might be no return. Unaware of Roger's vengeful designs, David felt, for the first time in many years, a sense of relief and peace. Jasmine and Noah had been freed, at least for now, from the cruelty of public opinion. But David also knew the storm was far from over. To protect the two people he loved most, he would have to face even greater challenges ahead. And he silently vowed, no matter what happened, he would never allow anyone to hurt Jasmine or Noah again. When the media storm finally began to die down, the days that followed seemed to pass more gently and quietly. Jasmine, after months of living in constant anxiety and fear, finally dared to open her heart and accept David's protection and companionship. Together, they moved into a small, unassuming but cozy house on the edge of the city, far from prying eyes where they could truly begin a peaceful new life. The house wasn't large, but it held everything Jasmine had longed for. Soft morning sunlight streaming through the curtains, a little kitchen where she could prepare warm meals, and a tiny bedroom for Noah filled with toys and baby essentials she had never dreamed of owning. All of it gave Jasmine a profound sense of security, as if life had finally given her a second chance. David, accustomed only to high-stakes meetings and lavish parties, found unexpected joy in these simple moments. He learned to change Noah's diapers, awkwardly but carefully prepared his bottles, and woke in the middle of the night to lull the baby back to sleep with a hoarse lullaby he'd never tried before. In those moments, David felt his own heart healing bit by bit, his long-buried wounds softening to make room for a happiness he'd feared lost forever. Each evening, after Noah was sound asleep, David and Jasmine would sit together in their small living room, bathed in the warm glow of a single lamp. They rarely spoke, maybe a few words about their day, but between them bloomed an unspoken understanding, a deep connection that needed no words. In those silences, Jasmine sometimes felt shy, but every time she looked into David's genuine, comforting gaze, her reservations melted away, replaced by a sense of absolute trust. What neither of them knew was that, from afar, jealous eyes were watching their every move. Roger Hamilton had not abandoned his plan for revenge, though he appeared to have retreated after the media scandal backfired. His resentment and envy only grew more dangerous and unpredictable. He'd hired private investigators to follow Jasmine and David, gathering every detail of their new life. His goal was not only to shatter the fragile peace they'd found, but to strike a fatal blow that they could never recover from. Roger began plotting a bolder, more ruthless scheme, one he believed could not fail. One afternoon in his dimly lit office, Roger sat before his computer, scrolling through the clandestine photos of Jasmine and Noah at their new home. A cruel smile spread across his face as he finalized his plan. He knew David's greatest vulnerability wasn't his career or reputation, but Jasmine and the child he loved like his own. To bring David to his knees, Roger needed only to attack the two people he cherished most. Meanwhile, in their little house, Jasmine sat by the window, gazing out over the small garden as a sense of peace filled her heart. She still had no idea of the looming threat. All she knew was her boundless gratitude for David, the man who, against all odds and at great personal cost, had chosen to protect her and Noah. David approached her quietly, draped a soft throw over her shoulders, and asked gently, "What are you thinking about, Jasmine?" She turned to him with a tender smile, though worry flickered in her eyes. "I was just wondering, do you think we can really stay this peaceful forever?" David paused, then took her hand and held her gaze with unwavering sincerity. "Whatever happens, I will always be here for you and Noah. I will never let anyone destroy the happiness we've found." Jasmine felt the warmth of his hand, and her heart swelled with trust and hope. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a vague anxiety lingered, because she knew Roger Hamilton would not give up so easily. Outside, the crimson sunset faded, as if warning that the peace they'd found was about to face even harsher trials. In the gathering shadows, Roger prepared his final, merciless assault, an attack savage enough to thrust everyone in that little house into the fiercest fight for survival they had ever known. As dusk settled over the little garden in front of the house, Jasmine couldn't shake the vague sense of unease that had wrapped itself around her. Just then, the doorbell rang softly, breaking the stillness of the sunset. Jasmine rose quietly, crossed the entryway and accepted a single envelope from the courier. The letter was plain and unadorned, the handwriting graceful but trembling, as if the writer were struggling to contain deep emotions. When Jasmine saw the sender's name, her heart clenched painfully. It was from her mother, Vanessa Parker, the same woman who had abandoned her at the darkest moment of her life. Jasmine sat down in the chair by the window, hands shaking as she unfolded the letter. Each line felt like a silent tear, every word suffused with regret, guilt, and a desperate plea for forgiveness. "My dear Jasmine, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but day after day I ache for you and for the little grandson I've never held. I'm not asking you to forget the pain I caused. I only beg for one chance to meet Noah, even if just once. I want to hold him in my arms and tell him that his grandmother loves him, though I fear it may be too late." Tears slipped down Jasmine's cheeks, smudging the final lines. Inside, a fierce battle raged, between the old wounds she'd never healed and the fierce longing to give Noah a complete family. David stepped into the room and immediately sensed the tension and pain etched on Jasmine's face. He sat beside her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder, offering silent strength. "What's happened, Jasmine?" he asked softly. Without speaking, Jasmine handed him the letter. He read it slowly, his eyes softening with understanding. After a moment of quiet, he looked at her and said empathetically, "I know this is hard, but Noah deserves the chance to know his grandmother, to grow up surrounded by a family's love. And perhaps you need this too, to heal those old wounds." Jasmine met his gaze, fear and a flicker of hope mingling in her eyes. "But I'm scared, David. What if she hurts me, or Noah again?" He squeezed her hand reassuringly, his voice warm and steady. "I'll be right here with you. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone. And maybe forgiveness will be the key to the peace you've always longed for." Unnoticed by them, outside the window a sleek black car sat concealed beneath dense trees, and in its shadow, Roger Hamilton watched and listened. He had secretly planted a small bug in their home, eavesdropping on the entire conversation. The letter from Vanessa, so innocent in appearance, had given him the perfect opportunity to execute the ruthless revenge he'd been planning. A cold smile curled Roger's lips as he contemplated his next move. He would exploit Jasmine's reunion with her mother to manufacture a fresh, even more devastating scandal, one that would shatter the fragile peace Jasmine and David had found. He longed to see Jasmine utterly undone and to force David to pay for having dared to defy him. Meanwhile, Jasmine remained in David's protective embrace, her mind torn by countless emotions. Finally, she drew a steadying breath and looked at David with resolve. "I'll try meeting her, this once. Not for me, but for Noah. He deserves the chance to grow up with a true family." David smiled, pride and love shining in his eyes as he gazed at Jasmine, her bravery shining through all she had endured. Yet neither of them knew that, in the gathering darkness beyond their window, Roger Hamilton was quietly finishing the final, sinister preparations of a plan he was certain would succeed this time. He knew that to destroy David completely, he needed only strike at the two people David loved most. As the sun's last glow slipped below the horizon, that little house, so full of hope and peace, was unknowingly stepping into a new and far more brutal battle, one that would demand every ounce of courage and strength David and Jasmine could summon to protect their fragile new haven from Roger's merciless designs. Deciding to go back was never easy for Jasmine, but this time she wasn't alone. David was by her side, the steadfast support who had encouraged her to face the deepest pains of her past. They set out at dawn, when the mist still clung to the narrow streets leading to Jasmine's childhood home, now filled with both painful and happy memories she'd once vowed never to revisit. The car rolled slowly down familiar roads, and Jasmine's heart tightened as each landmark brought back vivid recollections. She inhaled deeply to steady herself, squeezing David's hand for courage. When they pulled up in front of the Parker family's small house, Jasmine's heart nearly stopped. The house looked unchanged, tiny and unassuming, but that worn wooden door held countless memories of tears and despair from the night she had fled from it. The door creaked open to reveal Vanessa Parker, trembling and anxious in the frame. Jasmine felt a sharp pang as she saw her mother, the same woman who had once cast her aside, now gaunt, her hair streaked with gray, her face etched with time and regret. A choking silence hung between them. Vanessa's eyes brimmed with tears, her lips quivering without a word. Jasmine stood frozen, her emotions a whirlwind within. Then Noah stirred, his innocent gaze finding his grandmother, whom he had never met, and his tiny hand reached out. Noah's innocence shattered the invisible barrier between mother and daughter. Vanessa burst into tears and took unsteady steps toward her grandson. Through sobs, she cried out, "Oh, Noah, my grandson, I'm so sorry, sweetheart, and I'm sorry, Jasmine." For the first time in her life, Vanessa lifted Noah into her arms. Tears streamed like rain down her aged cheeks as her trembling hand gently stroked his soft hair, overflowing at last with all the love she had long repressed. In that moment, Jasmine felt an electric surge run through her, as if each buried wound in her soul began to stitch itself closed. Beside her, David stood quietly, eyes full of compassion and understanding. He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, reminding her she no longer faced this journey alone. What none of them realized was that, not far away, across the street, Roger Hamilton watched from a hidden corner. A cold smile played on his lips as he saw his chance to deal the final blow to the fragile bond forming between Jasmine and her mother. He pulled out his phone and swiftly sent false information to a local newspaper, preparing to unleash a new scandal that would hurt Jasmine and David more deeply than ever. As evening descended, the little family sat around the simple kitchen table in Jasmine's childhood home. Summoning her courage, Jasmine looked her mother in the eye and asked, "Mom, why have you changed? Why do you want to see Noah and me?" Vanessa's eyes were red-rimmed, but her gaze was more sincere than ever. "Because I've realized nothing is more important than family. I let fear and society's judgments drive me, and I lost the daughter I loved most. I don't expect your forgiveness right away. I only want you to understand how deeply I regret losing you." Those heartfelt words lifted a massive weight from Jasmine's heart, a burden she'd carried for so many years. She knew nothing would instantly return to how it once was, but at least they could begin again from this moment of genuine truth. David saw the first bloom of peace on Jasmine's face and felt his own tension ease. He knew this was exactly what she needed, to move forward and heal the wounds she'd borne for so long. Just then, David's phone buzzed. A new message arrived with links to the latest article. Vicious accusations against Jasmine, David, and even Vanessa, accompanied by maliciously taken photos. David's heart hardened with resolve. Roger had not given up on shattering their lives. Clenching his phone, David vowed never to let Roger succeed. He would do whatever it took to protect Jasmine and Noah, ensuring their newly mended family would never suffer again. Yet David also understood this final battle would be the greatest challenge he and Jasmine had ever faced. A ruthless fight that only courage, love, and the truth could win. And in that moment he silently promised himself, no matter the cost, he would protect the ones he loved from the cruelty and danger looming ahead. The final battle with Roger had raged on for months, as he kept unleashing one malicious plot after another to destroy the newly repaired lives of Jasmine and David. But in the end, when the full truth came to light, every one of Roger's dark schemes collapsed into ruin. David not only defended Jasmine's honor and her family's reputation, he made Roger face the consequences he deserved. Roger Hamilton lost his job, was publicly denounced, and ultimately forced to leave town in ignominious disgrace, leaving behind only the memory of his cruel intrigues. Time flew by like a sweet dream. A year later, the painful memories of that drawn-out war had begun to fade, and Jasmine and David had rediscovered the simple yet deeply meaningful peace they'd built together. Vanessa, too, had become an indispensable part of Noah's life, helping him grow up surrounded by the love of his mother, father, and grandmother, something Jasmine had once thought impossible. One late spring morning, golden sunlight streamed through the trees of the small park near their home, as David led Jasmine and Noah on their usual stroll. Noah, now toddling confidently, scampered across the soft green grass, his laughter ringing out like the purest notes of their new life. When the little family paused beside the crystal-clear park pond, David suddenly dropped to one knee. From his pocket, he produced a small blue velvet box. His gaze was tender yet full of emotion as he looked up at Jasmine. "Jasmine, over the years, I thought I had lost everything. But then you and Noah came into my life, and I realized that the greatest gift was still waiting for me. You taught me how to love again, and helped me find myself in the process. Will you give me the honor of being the man by your side for the rest of our lives?" Jasmine was speechless, her heart pounding at the sight of the simple yet exquisite ring David held. Before she could answer, Noah toddled over, his innocent eyes wide, and called out in his sweet, childlike voice, "Daddy!" Both parents were stunned into silence, tears in their eyes. It was the first time Noah had called David Daddy, and in that instant all of their past wounds were healed by a magic stronger than any pain. David swept Noah into his arms, tears streaming down his face for the first time in years. Jasmine, too, burst into tears of boundless joy. With a trembling voice full of sincerity, she nodded at David. "Yes, I will. I will be by your side forever." Everyone around in the park fell quiet, moved by the pure happiness they witnessed. Bathed in golden sunlight, a new family was reborn out of courage, forgiveness, and deep love. Off to one side, Vanessa watched in silent tears of joy and gratitude. She saw her daughter find true happiness after the suffering she had once caused, and her heart was full. For David, the moment crystallized a truth he'd never known. Real happiness did not come from wealth or power, but from opening one's heart, loving fully and authentically, despite all the trials endured. Looking into David's eyes, Jasmine felt the peace and honesty she'd always longed for. She knew that from this moment forward, she would never be alone again. Hand in hand with David, she would build a future filled with warmth and love for Noah, something she had dared only to dream of in her loneliest, most despairing days. Time itself seemed to stand still in that moment of true love's triumph. A stronger, more enduring family had been formed under the radiant sun, accompanied by Noah's joyous laughter and the overflowing trust in Jasmine and David's hearts. As for Roger Hamilton, the man who had tried to destroy their lives, he was now completely forgotten, left to face the just consequences of his envy, hatred, and greed. In that small park, beneath a clear blue sky, a new chapter of life had begun, one brimming with hope and profound healing. David not only found true love, he found himself again in the arms of Jasmine and Noah, his new family, where his heart finally felt at home. Life is full of surprises we never see coming. Through the moving story of Jasmine, David, and baby Noah, we're reminded that genuine love, courage, and forgiveness have a magical power, strong enough to heal every wound and mend every broken past. What about you? If you were in Jasmine's shoes, could you open your heart and forgive those who once hurt you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.